ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ॐ त्वमेव माता च पिता त्वमेव त्वमेव बन्धुश्च सखा त्वमेव त्वमेव विद्या द्रविणं त्वमेव सर्वं मम देव देव। ओम गुरुदेव भगवान शिव शंकर भोलेनाथ कैलाशपति महाराज की जय। भगवान व्यास जी महाराज की जय। शंकराचार्य भगवान की जय। स्वामी चिन्मयानंद भगवान की जय। स्वामी दयानंद भगवान की जय। स्वामी प्रबुद्धानंद भगवान की जय। माता पिता की जय। सभी गुरु देवताओं की जय। सभी गुरु देवताओं की जय। श्री कृष्ण गोविंद हरे मुरारी हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा। श्रीमद् Bhagavad Gita. We have completed chapter number 3 yesterday. Today we'll summarize all the 3 chapters, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. In the first chapter of Gita, the teacher, here teacher is Krishna. The teacher Krishna and the disciple Arjuna were introduced, and the context leading Arjuna to ask Krishna for self-knowledge was given. Previously, Arjuna had only been interested in regaining the kingdom and settling old accounts with Duryodhana. Arjuna had no desire for this knowledge, and even though he had known Krishna for a long time, he did not regard him as a teacher. He always took him as a friend, as a brother. Arjuna had lived a life of dharma, and life of dharma necessarily leads one to ask fundamental questions about life. Even today, when one lives the life of dharma, fundamental questions about dharma arises, about life arises. It had given him the necessary viveka to ask Krishna, "O Bhagwan, O Lord, please teach me what is the ultimate good. I am your disciple." Only here Arjuna accepted himself as disciple and Lord as Guru. Before that, they were never Guru or Shishya. The first chapter describes the battlefield, Arjuna's despair and his argument concerning why he no longer wanted to fight. Early in the second chapter, Krishna tried to arouse Arjuna's enthusiasm. So what he would do, what had to be done, he addressed him as follows in shloka number 2 of chapter 2. Arjuna, in this crisis, from where has this despair come upon you? It is unbecoming of an upright man and does not add to your fame, nor does it lead to heaven. He says, Partha, Arjuna, do not yield to unmanliness. This does not benefit you. The scorcher of enemies, give up the lowly weakness of the heart and get up. In chapter number 2, shlokas 2 and 3, he says, Arjuna continued to explain why he could not fight, saying that he would prefer to live a life of bhikshu who lives on alms. This meant that he was thinking of taking life of sannyasa, that he wanted to renounce everything and seek moksha. He knew that particular knowledge was necessary for moksha and that a guru was necessary for gaining this knowledge. Thinking that there was no better guru than Krishna, Arjuna asked him for the knowledge, declaring himself to be Krishna's disciple. In response to Arjuna's request, Krishna did not simply say, "Stop talking and fight." Had he done so, and had Arjuna followed Krishna's advice, the Mahabharata would have no Gita. Instead, it looked as though Krishna was waiting for such an opportunity, such an occasion as this to teach Arjuna. Otherwise, he would not have started with asocyan anavasochyatvam parajanvadam cha bhashyase. You grieve for those who should not be grieved for, even though you speak words of wisdom. Nor would he have followed this statement up with nasto vidyate bhava na bhavo vidyate satha. The unreal never is, and the real is never absent. In fact, Krishna covered the entire teaching in second chapter, talking about knowledge and about karma yoga. How one has to live one's life in manner that helps one gain certain freedom from the hold of likes and dislikes. Then towards the end of the chapter, Arjuna asked Krishna to describe a person who is established in his knowledge. He says, Keshava, Krishna, what is the description of a person of firm wisdom, one whose mind abides in the self? How does such a person whose mind is not shaken by anything speak, sit and walk? 54th shlok of chapter number 2. In asking Krishna to describe the sthiti prajna, wise person, Arjuna indicates that description should cover how the person talks, walks and sits. Krishna saw the spirit of Arjuna's question and defined a sthiti prajna in these words. When a person gives up all the desire as they appear in the mind, happy in oneself, with oneself alone, Partha, that person is said to be one of the ascertained knowledge. Shloka number 55 of chapter 2. In 56 he says, the one who is not affected by adversities, who is without yearning for pleasure and is free from longing, fear and anger, is said to be wise person, whose knowledge stays unshaken. The one who is unattached in all situation, who never rejoices or gaining the pleasant nor hates the unpleasant, his knowledge is well established. When, like the turtle that withdraws its limbs, this person is able to completely withdraw the sense organs from their objects, his knowledge is steady. His knowledge is steady. This is what he said in verse number 56, 57 and 58. We see here that Krishna appreciating the spirit of Arjuna's question, converted into how does wise person interact with the world. He never interpreted how does a wise person walks. He interpreted it as how does the wise person interact with the world. A sthiti prajna, Krishna said, is one whose knowledge is steady, sthir. Meaning one whose knowledge leaves nothing to be desired. Such a person is happy with oneself and does not require anything other than self in order to be happy. The person is also not afraid of anything. When unpleasant situations occur, he or she faces them without being adversely affected in any way, nor is such a person elated when pleasant situation occurs. The spontaneous expression of the wisdom of a wise person becomes sadhana, values, or discipline for the seeker. Which is why Arjuna was interested in the qualities of wise person. Krishna describes all these qualities to Arjuna. He also told Arjuna of certain obstacles of gaining his wisdom, such as how by dwelling upon certain object, Vishay Dhyana, we give them subjective attributes in addition to those attributes that the objects already have. For instance, as long as you look upon money as simply a buying power, there is no problem. However, when you look upon it as source of security, you are creating a problem for yourself, because your conclusion is not totally true. Money itself cannot make you secure. Anything that you hold on to that is other than yourself only confirms your insecurity. As long as you want crutches, you do not stand on your own legs. You truly secure person requires nothing outside of oneself to make him or her feel secure. There is nothing outside in the world which can secure you. No money can secure. No money can cure your insecurities. Giving object the attribute that they do not have, seeing certain qualities in them they are not there, and then dwelling upon them creates attachment, sangha, towards them. Within the flow of what he was teaching, Krishna pointed out all this and what comes of this sangha. In the person who dwells upon object, an attachment is born with the reference to them. From attachment is born desire, and from desire anger is born. Chapter number 2, shloka number 62. From anger come delusion, and from delusions comes the loss of memory. Because of the loss of memory, the mind becomes incapacitated. And when the mind is incapacitated, the person is destroyed. Then Krishna said, Arjuna, if you really want to know what a wise person is, you have to be wise yourself. There is no other way of understanding such a person's behavior and so on are not indication of person's wisdom. Behavior and so on are not indication of person's wisdom. In that which night for all begins, the one who is wise, who has mastery over oneself is awake. That is in which beings are awake, is night for the wise person who sees. This is verse number 69, chapter 2. The difference between those who are wise and those who are not wise is like night and day. So what the wise people are awake to, the ignorant people are not awake to. What the ignorant are awake to, the wise are not awake to. In other words, what the ignorant think of as reality, the wise do not see as real at all. Here night and day are taken as ignorance and knowledge. In fact, there is no other difference to save that between knowledge and ignorance. A wise person understands that everything is I, the Atma, whereas the other people think everything is getting me. Thus the ignorant thinks that the world is out to get him or her, while the wise person see that world is oneself. There is nothing outside oneself. It is already with me, already me. Having described a sthiti pragya as best as he could, Krishna had to say to Arjuna, how are you going to understand the wise? Arjuna, unless you are wise. Only a wise person, only a jnani can understand the jnani. One has to be a jnani to understand the jnani. What kind of description is meaning? Any kind of description is meaningless. To really know what wise person is, you have to gain wisdom. To explain further, Krishna used a more positive example. Just as water flows into the ocean that is brimful and still so on, the wise person into whom all objects enter gains peace, remains unchanged, whereas the desire of the object does not gain peace. 70th verse of chapter number 2. The ocean is no way affected whether the rain happens or the river enters it. There is no increase or decrease, no gain or loss for the ocean. No change affects its oceanness, it is its fullness, because it does not depend upon anything other than itself. In its glory, without any external support, the ocean is full and complete. Similarly, the fullness of one who is wise is centered on one. I am the whole. In fact, to which the wise people are awake, therefore they require nothing in order to be full. No addition will bring about any change in the wise, nor will any subtraction take away or make any dent in his or her fullness. This too was pointed out. In contrast to an ocean, however, a pond is something that will dry up without rain. And if there is too much rain, the pond is nowhere to be seen. The kami, one who has to fulfill certain desire in order to be happy, is like a pond. When something pleasant happens, the person hits the ceiling with the elation. And when something unpleasant happens, he or she hits the rock bottom and may even consider committing suicide. This is where the positive things. There are many people talking about positivity. We should think positively. Until and unless you study Gita, no one can think positive. It is only Gita which teaches how to think positive, how to be positive. Why there is no need to be negative? Because there is no hitting up, there is no hitting down, there is no reason to commit suicides. As the boys and girls nowadays do. A film hero takes up, becomes a big hero. He's happy, like a pond, overfilled, and then few films are taken away, and he's like a dry pond, hit rock bottom, committing suicides. There is no need, there is no hitting, there is be like a ocean, not like a pond. Krishna concluded the second chapter saying, having given up all binding desire, the person who moves around devoid for longing without the sense of limited I and mine gains peace. Partha, this is Arjuna. This is what is meant by one being in Brahman. Having gained this, one is not deluded. Remaining therein, even at the end of one's life, one gets liberation. Krishna said to be a sthiti pragya is the very state of being Brahman, being in form of knowledge. This state is not one that you will lose. While waking state or a drug induced state, it is something as true as you are, which is why once this knowledge is gained, there is no question of losing it. Because the gain is in terms of knowledge, not experience. The self is understood to be Brahman, the whole, and the understanding is final. Therefore, there can be no falling back into samsara, even if you do not gain this knowledge until you are very old. Atakale inam prapya na vimuyate. Even when you are in the last throes of your life, with one foot in grave, if you come to understand that you are the whole, when you are a free person, if the very elderly are able to gain the knowledge, then those whose eyes are still able to see, whose ears are still able to hear, and those who are able to sit for length of time in quiet contemplation can surely come to know. That is why it is said, there is no age limitation. There is no age to learn Gita, to understand Shastra. At very early stage, if you start learning, the earlier it is better. This is the best part of Gita. It makes you think positively. It makes you think, what are you wondering for? This is the beautiful nature of this Bhagavad Gita. In third chapter, begin with Arjuna's next question. Janardana, Krishna, if your contention knowledge is better than action, why then do you impel me into this gruesome action, Keshava? First question of chapter 3, in the first verse. With words that are seemingly contradictory, you seem to confuse my mind, deciding for good which is better. Tell me the one thing by which I shall gain liberation. This is what Arjuna asks. Here Arjuna presented a problem. Krishna, if I have understood you correctly, you seem to have your heart in knowledge alone. I ask for Shreyash, Moksha from you, and you made it very clear that this can be gained by knowledge, but not by fulfilling desires. You even said that all desires are to be given up, yet you say I have to perform action. Therefore I am confused. Everybody gets confused. Everybody is in confusion. Whether to do karma or not to do karma, whether to gain knowledge. If knowledge can liberate me, then why are we doing karma? Where is the need to do karma? Why I have to fall in this samsara? You are already fallen into samsara. This is how Arjuna understood that Krishna had said. In fact, Krishna had not said that all one's desire have to be given up. Krishna never said that give up your desires. He said that wise person give up desire, meaning that he or she has no desire to become secure and happy. There is no desire. You are already secured. You are already happy. The happiness is in fullness. The person may have a desire to do something, but by fulfilling this desire, he or she is not going to become more secure. Such delusion is no longer there for a wise. Although this was what Krishna actually said, Arjuna took it as he did because he knew that every karma action is presided by desire. Without desire, there is no karma at all. So he thought, if desire is to be given up, then why should I do karma? And how am I to gain knowledge? The only way seems to be give up karma along with the desire that initiate them and seek knowledge. Since Krishna had asked Arjuna to follow karma yoga to get up and fight, Arjuna was naturally confused. His thinking was, if knowledge will give me shreyas, that is what I should go for, and for the sake of knowledge I need not do all the actions. All that is needed is to renounce everything, go to a teacher and gain the knowledge. Therefore, sannyasa seems to be the answer to my problems. Taking sannyasa is not the answer for your problems. Sannyasa is not the answer for problems. In an attempt to resolve the seeming contradiction, Arjuna asked Krishna to tell him once and for all the one thing that would give him shreyas, to which Krishna says, the sinless one, Arjuna, the twofold committed lifestyle in this world was told by me in the beginning, the pursuit of knowledge for some renunciates and the pursuit of karma yoga for those who pursue activity. Chapter number 3, shloka number 3. From Arjuna's question, Krishna could tell that Arjuna had not understood what he had been saying. It is true that sannyasa is a lifestyle, but real karma sannyasa is giving up all action by knowledge. Jananena karma sannyasa, jnanena karma sannyasa. While karma yoga means upaya for gaining this knowledge, karma yoga is upaya to gain this knowledge. To clarify the distinction between sannyasa as a lifestyle and a renunciation of action through knowledge, Krishna reminded Arjuna that no one can remain without performing any action at all, regardless of whether the person is sannyasi or not. In sannyasa also action is being done. There is an action being done in sannyasa also. Indeed, no one ever remains for even a second without performing action, because everyone is forced to perform action by three gunas, Sata, Raja and Tama, born of Prakriti. 3rd chapter, 5th shloka. A sannyasi is a person who, having taken certain vows, have given up the obligatory duties prescribed in the Vedas. Having performed the non-competing person in the society, the sannyasi pursue knowledge to the exclusion of all else. Krishna acknowledged that such a pursuit is available, that sannyasa is a lifestyle dedicated to this pursuit, but cautioned that it is not an easy one. He also explained that karma yoga is another lifestyle, and it means that for real sannyasa, sarva karma sannyasa, which can be achieved by both the sannyasi and karma yogi. Sarva karma sannyasa can be achieved by both sannyasi and karma yogi. We have studied in detail about this. To live a life of sannyasi requires that you have certain mind, certain contemplativeness, which can be achieved through karma yoga. When you live a life of a karma yoga as a householder, for example, you do not lose anything. In fact, you gain. This is true for any mumukshu, any seeker who is in stage of life other than sannyasa. Each one gains the same end, because knowledge is something that is to be pursued. Therefore, Arjuna could pursue the knowledge even as karma yogi. This was what Krishna wanted him to understand. We saw in second chapter that one does not become a karma yogi without proper attitude with reference to Ishvara being the karma phala data, the giver of the fruit of action, and knowing that I am only the performer of action. When I have this attitude, the result of all actions are taken by me as prasada. Also every action that I perform is yajna, a sacrifice or offering to the Lord. This attitude was again highlighted and discussed in third chapter. In verse number 11 of chapter 3, he says, propitiate the desire with yajna. This, may those deities propitiate you. Propitiating one another, you shall gain the highest good. The deities propitiated by yajna will give you desirable object. One who enjoys object given by them without offering them in return is indeed a thief. Those who eat having first offered the food to Lord are released from impurities, whereas those sinful people who cook only for themselves eat papa, the sin. In this detailed way, Krishna explained how the attitude of Karma Yoga can release you from the hold of your likes and dislikes when the action you perform is done as a worship or a sacrifice. Then Krishna said, even a wise person acts in keeping with his or her own nature, because all beings follow their own nature of what you is control. Each one thinks according to his or her own prakriti. Likes and dislikes are something that you cannot stop. They just happen. All thoughts happen in your mind, and you have no say over their occurrence. Collectively, they equal your own prakriti, your own disposition. Whatever you have done in previous life, prarabdha karma, and in this life also, all your dharma, adharma, punya, papa, sanskara set up certain thoughts in your mind, and there is no way of stopping this from happening. Even Ishvara cannot stop it. He has to set up like this, and he cannot cross his own mandate, nor can anyone else. Neither Ishvara's control nor anyone else can change the person's prakriti. The person will remain the same. Even if you were to control your thoughts by negating them, you would have to continue this negation throughout your lifetime. Your thoughts are from your prakriti, and prakriti is from all the karmas you have done in previous lives. In this life, all papa, punya, dharma, adharma, all prarabdha karmas, they have made this prakriti. Because of your previous karmas, you get this kind of prakriti. Only because of prakriti, all likes and dislikes happen. All kind of thoughts come in your mind. Given the fact that you cannot control your thought, is it not better to ask why thought should be considered a problem in first place? The person for whom thoughts are problem has a permanent nightmare, because thought is always there. Only a long sleep can help. In fact, thoughts themselves are not the problem. Thoughts are not the problem. Another question that arises is, if I cannot control my thought, what is the purpose of Shastra? If everyone simply performs action according to his or her prakriti, a person can commit murder and say, it is my nature, my disposition to do such thing. I cannot do otherwise. To take care of such conclusion, Krishna also said that you are the one who goes along with or withdraws from thought of committing murder. It is you who has the deciding factor. You can decide whether to do this karma or not do this karma. Despite of thought in your mind, you can decide whether to do it or not to do it. Your Vivek Buddhi is required at this point of time. You cannot control your thoughts, but you can choose which thought you are going to identify with and which you are not going to identify with. This is the only freedom you have, and this freedom is enough. Thus Krishna said, there are longing and aversions potentially in every sense object. May one not come under the spell of these two, because they are one's enemy. 34th verse and 35th verse he says, better is one's own imperfectly performed dharma than the well performed dharma of another. Death in one's own dharma is better. The dharma of another is fought with fear. Here Krishna pointed out that even if your own dharma, what is to be done by you is rather unpleasant, it is better to be with it than to be with someone else's dharma. A dharma does not belong to you at all. That dharma doesn't belong to you at all. What is not to be done by you, even though it can be done by another person who is in another stage of life, is not your dharma. For instance, a sannyasi does not perform a daily ritual enjoined in Vedas. Nevertheless, this is no reason for a grahastha householder not to do them. Grahastha has to do them. Each person has to perform action according to his or her situation. It is better to die doing one's own action, because to do otherwise is fraught with fear. It does not benefit you, nor does it benefit the society in which you live. Therefore, Krishna said each person has to do his or her own karma. In other words, one's own dharma has to be followed. Arjuna then raised a doubt. Hey Varshane, hey Krishna, impelled by what does a person commit sin, as though pushed by some force, even though not desiring to? Arjuna wanted to know why a person does things that he or she knows are wrong. Duryodhana also knew what he is doing is wrong. Although the person is convinced that certain actions are not proper, still he or she does them. Why is that? Is there a force other than oneself, or a devil, or something, a shaitan? Is there, as some theologies maintain, a force other than the divine? Is there to demonic force called evil in this world, which is independent of divine force? Is it that the divine force wants you to do right things, and the demonic forces come along with impels you to do the wrong things? Divine forces say do the right thing, and demonic forces say do the wrong thing. If so, the demonic force certainly seems to be more powerful than the divine force. In fact, Krishna said there is no such force. The only devil is the one within. You are it. This he expressed in the following way. This desire, this anger born of guna, rajas, is a glutton and great sinner. Know that to be the enemy here in this world. Known that to be the enemy. Arjuna, it is nothing but your kama, desire alone. Krishna said, kama does it. Krodha does it. Once desire becomes passion, priorities becomes confusion. The power of kama is such, the desire is so virulent that you no longer care what means you adopt to fulfill the desire. You cut corners wherever you can, compromising the means, because the end has become so important. Krishna explained, This is the problem. Arjuna, this enemy is the form. This enemy in form of kama converts you just as the fire is covered by smoke, the mirror by coat of dust, and a fetus by a womb. This kama is permanent enemy for the viveki. He or she must deal with it. First, by knowing that it operates with reference to sense pursuit and is located in the mind and buddhi, indriyani mano buddhi ayasha adhishthanam uchyate. Having understood this, you have to step outside the kama, about which Krishna said, they say that the sense organs are superior to the body, the mind is superior to the sense organ, the intellect is superior to the mind, whereas the one who is superior to the intellect is he, the Atma. Verse number 42. Hence Krishna explained that the Indriyas, the senses, are superior to the body, physical body, because they are subtler, more pervasive nature. However, the sense themselves are absolutely harmless because the mind is superior to them, even though the mind has doubts and so on. The senses are just reporters and do not harm anyone. They are simply instruments that have been given to you for purpose and are not meant to take you for a ride. They are in the hands of mind. The mind itself is a problem because the buddhi, the intellect, does not function when fancies of the mind overpower it. The mind is in the hand of buddhi. The mind and buddhi being nothing but different type of thoughts belonging to the same antahkarana alone. Whichever is more powerful, a thought of the mind or a buddhi, is going to rule the day. If the mind is more powerful, it will definitely rob your wisdom away, making you do what is not to be done and omit what is to be done. To keep these thoughts in this proper place, you have to step out of the mind and the buddhi. Only then you will understand a thought is as a thought. The nature of human being is determined by one's thoughts and conclusion about oneself. The sense that I am imperfect, I am incomplete, I am useless, I am worthless is a conclusion. Such conclusion are basis for your constant attempt to prove yourself to be a somebody, to make yourself into someone who will be acceptable in your own eyes. In this way, life becomes constant struggle. Krishna concluded the 3rd chapter by telling Arjuna that there is only one way to solve this problem, and that is to resolve it fundamentally. He said, Arjuna, the mighty armed, knowing that which is superior to the intellect, in this way, having made the mind steady with the buddhi, destroys the enemy that is in form of binding desire, that which is so difficult to understand. Verse number 43, we just did it yesterday, day before, yesterday. One must step out of one's buddhi by recognizing that which is above the buddhi, the Atma, that is ever pure, Shuddha, limitless, Ananda, full, Purna, and the only reality, Satya. Knowing this, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, this Brahmatma, you are free. Once you have this knowledge, all your desires, thoughts become privileges. Only your buddhi, mind, thoughts, all of them become so many adjuncts, upadhis for you. In themselves, these upadhis are limited, but the person is free from any sense of limitation. Hence, for such person, the desire becomes privilege. You can enjoy desires. We want to do. You don't want to do, don't do. Don't fall into that desire. Kama, desire, is not something that can be easily understood because it comes in 100 different forms and in situation where you were never expect it. But kama can give up in the sense that you can step out of it. Then the desires are simply known to you. They cannot harm you. This is the only way to deal with kama, desire, because there is no end to the desires that can arise. Thus, step out and be free, because you are indeed free. You need to only discover this fact. This is the purpose of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Here the chapter 3 comes to conclusion. Krishna has clearly said it is the desire which is the real enemy. Need to step out and then see the desire. Then seeing the desire will be privilege. This is how beautiful it is. This is how, when you have a problem, you must. This is why it is always said, whenever you have a problem, look into Gita. It will give you positivity. This is the positivity, not anything else. Nowhere. No one can teach other than Krishna. The positivity taught by Krishna is the positivity. Word to word. No change. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudashyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Om Gurubhyo Namaha. So, chapter number 3 is concluded here, and after few days we'll start with chapter number 4. Hari Om Tat Sat.